All right, well, I'm going to kick this off here. I think it would make sense for each one of you to tell us about yourselves, your background, your education, and exactly what you do today. So, Papia, is it all right if we start with you? All right, try it again. Papia, let's start with you.
Thank you. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for having me. Papia Gambelin. I was born in Columbia, South Carolina, moved to the San Jose Bay Area when I was 16, went to Independence High School, San Jose State. And,
go Spartans.
Yeah, let's go Spartans. Started as an electrical engineer major and quickly switched to a BS in environmental science because I really wanted to get out and make some money, and started my career in the garbage and recycling business. Worked in that business for almost 20 years. And then while I was doing that, I used to play in politics. I loved participating in campaigns. So fast forward, I learned that you can make a living doing politics and working for a business, or, and I was like, oh, well, sign me up. I know, right? It's like, okay, cool. So went to work for the Apartment Association as a political director, and then I landed at PG&E where I led the public affairs team there for 11 years. I left after the 7th wildfire that I was responsible for, and I had done a lot of work with, I was personally responsible. No, just kidding. That's not true. But a lot of work, a lot of engagement with the public sector, obviously, in that setting. I left that job because it was really tough, and started consulting for Platinum Advisors. So where's Susan Brown? She was my client. And then I joined United Airlines, where I am today. I've been there just shy of 2 years, where I lead. I'm the managing director of government affairs for state and local at United Airlines. So I have 7 states in my portfolio, from Alaska down to Hawaii, where I engage on public policy and help support the business in these markets. So that's my little spiel.
Amazing. All right, Amy, it's a tough act to follow, but I think you're gonna blow us away as well.
Oh, yeah. I was nominated to go first, so thank you. You didn't know that, but hi everyone. Amy Palan. I grew up outside of the Chicago area, and I spent the majority of my childhood there. I went to undergrad there, I went to business school there, and I started my career there as well. I work for Accenture, which is, some of you probably know, a management consulting company, global, quite large. I've been there for 22 years, which is really hard to believe even for me. So 24 years in the consulting industry and 22 of those years with Accenture. I focus primarily on, if you think about the customer experience space, so helping our clients really transform and think about how they can deliver better marketing, sales, and service operations to their clients, and then deliver a better experience in turn. So that's been my focus for the last several years with Accenture. I'm also on the board for a nonprofit called Dress for Success, if anybody is familiar with Dress for Success. Really wonderful organization that helps women to become financially independent by providing skills and training and just the necessities to actually show up at a job interview and progress their way through a career. So really excited about the 2 different hats that I wear, and happy to be here and talk to all of you today.
All right.
Let's dive into the meat and potatoes. Sorry for the vegans out there. So we do know that Deloitte had released a report about 4 or 5 years ago on how diversity and equity and inclusion is a crucial role, and also leads to companies performing better. Yet we're not really finding that from a distribution perspective. What are some of the key elements of why that's happening, and how can we right that wrong and get closer to where we need to be?
So in my experience, I do see it happening a bit, right? And I think we certainly have a ways to go, but I do see that occurring. I mean, I'll speak to my company, which our CEO a couple years ago put out a objective to say by 2025 we want to have gender equality in the entire organization, especially in the leadership roles. And I'm really proud to say that we're at about 40%, and that happens because the way that we're sourcing skills, the way that we're sourcing talent, we're really trying to inform people about the importance of inclusion and diversity. When you have different experiences, different skill sets, different points of view, you've got a better solution. And so we're really looking at the candidates that are coming through the pipeline differently. We're promoting, based on capability and equality. And I think we're seeing that shift. And I'm seeing a lot of our clients go through a lot of the same. So I'm not sure if we're at the stats from what Deloitte published. We probably have some stats too we can share, but it's getting there, and it's exciting to be part of that journey.
When I'm going to share a story. So during my time at PG&E, I generally worked for men in leadership. So I worked in the corporate affairs department. Our senior vice president, the two that I had before, there was a woman in that role. Never really talked about pay equity, didn't really talk about D&I or any of these things. It was sort of a, oh, well, we have diversity on the team. Look, and they point to like someone like me or Travis Kyoto, who was my boss, right? It was just sort of an assumed. But when we got a woman in the role, her name is Helen Burt. She took over this role after one of our challenges, whether it was a car mill explosion or something had happened. She came in to take over, and one of the first things she did in the first month she took over was she did an equity pay assessment. And I all of a sudden got this like 9% increase in the middle of the fiscal year. And I'm like, not ever looking a gift horse in the mouth, going like, what's this for? And, and then she shared with us that when she was leading the customer organization, which was 6,000 people versus the corporate affairs, which was just shy of 1,000, that she had gone through this exercise and created some pay equity. And then she wanted to do it in our department. And then she also started working with the other leaders to ask them to do it. And now it's a standard practice at that company. United, right out the gate, first question I asked is, am I being paid the same as my male colleagues? Just have to ask. I have had this experience. And they responded with, yes, we do not have any discrepancy. So working for a company like United makes me proud that that's just part of the DNA. And they have huge strides in ensuring that there is equity and inclusion from that same perspective, that different people bring different perspectives. So it's really great to see that at these big companies that are, changing lives and impacting all of us.
Awesome.
So for any of you that know, Papia, you know that being called a badass by her is literally the ultimate compliment. And so now when I call her and I'm like, should I talk to this person? Total badass, and they get a phone call. But I'd love for you to break that down for us. Like, what in your mind makes someone a badass? And I think you probably have a lot to say about this.
So for me, a badass is, can you really get along with people, right? Are you kind? Are you hearing them? Are you willing to have a debate and have it be an intense debate and maybe even an uncomfortable conversation and have respect and walk away not only learning something, but maybe even changing something, and knowing that you can do that with that person is so incredibly impactful, hence the badass designation. That is such a cool experience to be able to debate somebody. And Nick and I have done that. You and I have done that. Susan and I have sort of done that. But, Susan and I have done that. Like, there are people that you can have real conversations and have a mutual respect, but walk away with the intent to learn and grow and support and challenge, right? So that to me is the true essence of being a badass, is wanting to take that information and making a change not only in yourself, but in whatever you're doing, and elevating and supporting in a very authentic way. There are people out there that say that they're going to support or elevate, and then they don't. That does not equal badass. Those that do are badasses. So that is a badass.
I love how you led with kindness with that, because I think a lot of times what people think is when you have women in positions of power like this, the only way to get there is to be like some badass bitch. And I think while that's important, and I think we do have to be really brave and we really have to stand for ourselves and we do have to ask for the matching salary, I also think showing people that women can also lead with kindness is really important. And when I first met Amy, when we had coffee, gosh, I don't know, almost like 8 months ago now. That was the first thing I picked up on is this incredible badass woman who just leads with such kindness and an ability to listen. And I'd love to better understand where that came from in you. How did you kind of cultivate this ability to listen, absorb, and then counsel?
Thank you, by the way. I think a lot of it has to do with the work that I do and the field that I chose to go into. So with consulting, it's a lot about problem solving, and you're sort of expected to be an expert and know and have an answer all the time. And the reality is we don't. None of us really do, right? You need a team. You need other people with different skill sets, and you need to be able to bring those together in a way that allows you to form an opinion or form a response or a solution that's going to be effective. And, I think for me, I've learned over the course of my career, I'll tell a story about a career coach that I had, and I've been fortunate enough to have a few of these career coaches throughout my time at Accenture. And a couple years ago, this career coach, she did an interview with several of my leaders, and one of the pieces of feedback that came back was it would be really nice if Amy could be more vulnerable and connect with people in a more, authentic way. And, it was at that moment I sort of realized I don't have to have all the answers. I don't have to, always be the person that knows exactly, what the right solution is, and how do you really work on bringing skills together and people together and do it in a very kind of kind and gentle way, because we all have, differences that we should appreciate. And when you put that together, it really is a successful outcome. So, yeah.
All right. So you guys are really accomplished, top of your field. I want to hear the war stories. I want to hear what you had to do to pay your dues to get here. And Papia, I really want you to talk about the 19 interviews you had to do to get the job at United. 19.
Yes, there were 19. So I'm gonna share a quick story from the garbage world, and then I'm gonna tell you about the 19. Quick story. So I was I used to work for BFI before it became Allied Waste on the peninsula. This is during the garbage ward days in the 2004 timeframe. And Jerry Hill was a board of supervisor. He, had grand jury investigation on all the garbage contracts. And one of the things that I was in the middle of is garbage contract negotiations with labor. And I was only allowed in the room because I was a woman. It was the only way to keep labor in the room for long enough for them to have the negotiation. I was asked to wear something cute. You're going to be taking notes. And that way, the people that are coming in from labor are going to stay in the room. And it was probably the first time where I was like, I'm down, because I learned how to conduct labor negotiations that way. And now today I advise on that issue, and I work really hard to be in that space, because I got to cut my teeth in a way that was a little non-traditional. But I think that kind of, experience really helps with 19 interviews. So coming out of the pandemic, I joined United in 2021, still suffering from the pandemic, obviously. Things were still bumpy. I was the first managing director leader being hired at the company after they had to lay off a lot of people during COVID. Most of the impact was on the M&A side, management and administration. They didn't really impact the frontline staff. So I think at that point, they were like, well, we really want to meet who this person is. So I interviewed with the CEO, the COO, the CTO, the head of labor, head of comms, just a bunch of people. And you know what, probably halfway through this process was when I thought, I really want to work at this company. I had drank the Kool-Aid at this point. I really liked the way I heard the leaders talk about their vision, how they wanted to emerge out of COVID, what their goals were. It was a great way to learn about the philosophy of the leadership that I was going to be serving and working with. So although it was brutal, and I actually didn't even think I wanted the job. I was consulting. I had a great gig. I was sort of doing a friend a favor who had the previous job. But after the 19 interviews and the grueling nature of them, because they weren't easy interviews, I was really pleased that they picked me, and it was the feeling was mutual.
Amazing. Do you know if anyone else was interviewing the 19th time? Or did they just weed everybody else out, and you were the last person on the island?
So they had gone through, my understanding was they had gone through interviews for 6 months trying to find a candidate that they were comfortable with, and they couldn't find one. So the person had left at the beginning of 2021. They went through several interviews, didn't find a candidate. I was asked to throw my name in. I was doing a friend a solid. And my understanding was I was the only person being considered at this point. So went through it.
You preferred to do all the interviews in just one big interview with 19 people?
That would be interesting, I think, for them. But I actually enjoyed the one-on-one. It was all Zoom, right? And I actually enjoyed the process. I learned a ton about the company, which is, to me, the best part of it.
Do you remember any of the challenging questions? Did anything kind of throw you off your game, or I'm sure you were super prepared?
I studied every leader because so many of them had like talks and things. So I would do my homework and kind of geek out in their space because, when you're in government affairs, you know a lot about a lot of different things, or you know a little bit about a lot of different things, inch deep, mile wide, right? So I took that approach. But I would say the one question that I would keep getting was, aren't you so excited Hawaii is in your territory? And I'm like, it's just, yes and no, right? Beautiful place, but you're there to work, right? You're there to do the hustle. You're there to make things happen. And here's this beautiful landscape and this chill environment. You don't get to be chill and beautiful in this space, right? You're hustling, you're doing the work, you're getting things done. So it's sort of a bittersweet. I would say that, so I would answer in that very authentic way. And I think my audience, right, the people asking me this question were a little taken aback by my philosophy and approach.
Can you stay with Hawaii for a quick second? Because you have another amazing story. So you'll be able to tell better than I, but essentially you were connecting with senior political leadership in Hawaii who wanted the people that were coming over to truly understand and appreciate Hawaiian culture. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how you're able to bring two disparate sides together?
Yes. So as many of you know, and this happens here in California, in Tahoe, for example, is the tourism sentiment. So in Hawaii, the previous leadership and even the current governor really was hearing from the community that, they don't want people to come to Hawaii. And as such, they were blaming the airlines and the fares and, us bringing people to the islands that were maybe not being as respectful as they should be. I'm sure many of you have been there. It's right, like it's a place where it's beautiful, but it's also has a different culture and philosophy. And it has a lot, the analogy I would use is a lot like the Asian culture. So when you go to someone's house, you're super respectful, you're so appreciative, you're almost, demure, because you are in someone else's home. And that was the philosophy of the previous governor. I would say that is the philosophy of the current governor. And so how do we bridge that? And, when I joined, it was early days, trying to find ways that we can develop partnerships so that we can start to communicate with our passengers on those philosophies. How do you show respect? How do you demonstrate that when you're going to a place that you're mindful about where you are? And so teaching mindfulness to the general public is not something I think most companies do, but you find great nonprofit partners to partner with to help develop content, which is what we did in our case, and showed that to the leadership of the state to say, United cares. We want to be respectful. We want to make sure we're playing a part in educating. And so that was the tactic we used. But it's really acknowledging the sentiment that they were trying to express and figuring out a way to solve for what they perceived as an issue.
So, Amy, can we hear your duping stories?
If I have anything like that, but I mean, I guess I can share some of the challenges, that I've been through, or just events, through my career that have sort of shaped the way that I operate today with work, outside of work. And one of the early stories, and it kind of goes back to your original question, Sharon, just about the kindness piece. But one of the things that has greatly influenced the way that I show up in work is just my family origin. So my parents migrated from India, similar to Papia's parents, I learned today. And we grew up, my sister and I and my family grew up in a really small town outside of Chicago. And there was no diversity at all where we were. And it was tough. We looked a little different. My grandmother wore a white sari. The food we ate was different. I remember my mom chasing us out to the school bus with some Indian breakfast that I don't know what it was, but you just wanted to fit in. And that's been a big part of, my journey, is trying to make sure that, I'm able to fit in and blend in. And I think over the years, I've sort of learned that appreciating sort of the differences and being kind with people who've had the differences is important. And that's a big part of my work at Accenture. So I wanted to share that story. But, one of the other things I learned along the way, the very first year I was going up for the managing director partner promotion process, I was working incredibly hard. My expectations were set. I thought I was going to make this promotion, and I was told, yes, you're there. And when I found out that, when my leader called me and I found out that I in fact did not get promoted, I was devastated. It was probably a bit dramatic. There were a lot of tears, and I was wondering why. And one of the things that I learned out of that, I had a mentor who decided she was going to take me on as a counselee and just, coach me through the process. And what she told me was, when I was listening to your story and I was listening to the other stories, I realized how much you spoke about we did this, we did that, we contributed this way, but you didn't really talk about I and what I did. And I think we're all, accustomed to really trying to make sure we recognize the team, we recognize people, but I think the self-advocacy and being visible is also really important. So something that, I learned along the way, and I think it's impacted certain milestones in my career.
Go ahead.
No, that's an amazing story to me. And I think a lot of the conversations when you get powerful women to talk is to talk about how the salaries aren't fair and men are so terrible, which sometimes they are, but just kidding. But I think all of us in our lives have had amazing allies and men who have kind of brought us up in our career. I know that I have one, my boss, Alan Klein, that I've worked with for 20 years, and I really owe my whole career to. And so I'm worried who your allies are and how the allies in your company work and how women are being fairly promoted by men.
It's a great question. I have to say a lot of my mentors and champions are men in the company, and I'm very grateful for that, because it's demonstrating the equality, and I think there's an opportunity for everybody. I was working on a project a couple years ago that I was really passionate about, and there's a lot of reasons why internally within the company it was recommended that we not pursue the deal. There was some history there. It was complicated. It wasn't the easiest thing to go after. But I was really compelled to do this. I felt really energized and motivated to go after this piece of work. And it was a 1.5-year process, incredibly long. I had 3 male mentors in my corner that were cheering me on the entire way. They all played a different role. And it's those experiences that, that I remember. And so I think the message is, look for your champions. They can be women, they can be men, they come in different forms, but really align to the people that see your gifts, that see what you bring, and are promoters and advocates of that.
I've had mostly men mentors, and I've been in these careers where it's men-dominated careers, right? So garbage industry, utility industry, and frankly in aviation, they are all male-dominated. And I have a lot of masculine energy. Like I come to things pretty hardcore. And I started to take on this role because of them. I think that I like to dress cute, but I will be like dropping F-bombs and like developing strategy, and I'm really aggressive in what I believe in. And it was encouraged, and I appreciate that. Women played a different role for me in my mentorship. And I think what they were doing for me was providing me the guidance on how to be effective with men while not offering that sexuality in this role, right? Like you can be like dressy and cute in a setting where it's all men. I mean, I'm sure many of you have been in meetings where you're the only woman in the room. And you know, and how do you ensure that they're hearing what you're saying and they're not like checking you out? And I hate to be that crass about it, and that's not my intent, but it's real. And so I've had women mentors say, you know, next time you're not going to want to wear that outfit, or think about X, think about saying X instead of saying Y. And I have appreciated that silent whisper from my women mentors. But I will say the champions, the ones that are like so aggressive, ride or die, have always been my male counterparts.
Can I? All right. So I want to tell you a study that we all know about, we've all heard about, and I don't really need your. I mean, you can talk about the study, but I'd really love some advice for women on this. So in 2014, the Harvard Review published an article stating that men apply for jobs when they meet only 60% of the qualifications, while women only apply if they meet 100% of the qualifications. What are your thoughts on that, and what advice do you have for women who are trying to climb the corporate ladder?
I'll take this one first. I have noticed that, and I see it in my teams. I see it in my organization. I see it with my clients. I see it pretty regularly. And I think the advice, and I've been coached on this as well, you don't have to be 100% prepared, because you're, for lack of a better word, competition, male, female, they're not 100% prepared either. And so you have to have the confidence in what you bring to the role, whether it's exactly what they're looking for or something else that, you know, you're able to deliver against, and just say yes. There's been times where I've turned roles down, and including recently, and I think there's probably a little bit of fear and anxiety around, can I do this? Am I as qualified? Will I be successful? But I think when you just say yes and take the risk, there's an incredible reward on the other side. Whether it's you tried it, maybe you didn't succeed, but you learned something, or you just knocked it out of the park and you were a total badass. So.
Papia, do you have anything to add to that? Because I have a follow-up question.
Well, I would just take it from a slightly different perspective, which is political. So, you know, you have to ask a woman to run for political office at a minimum of 11 times. And so very similar, right? And I think it's an issue of confidence. Like, am I, and part of it is also, are you prepared? You know, we want to be prepared. We want to do a good job. We've got these like narratives in our mind that we're trying to adhere to. And, you know, I'm a just do it kind of person. It's like, what's stopping you? Like, let's make that happen. Like, I'm a big enabler. That's something I'm very proud of, whether it's shopping or running for political office. I will enable you. Like, it's like, you need that support, I got your back. So, whatever it is. Yes, I mean, it is. Like, you want to buy something and you're like, do I deserve that? And I'm like, F yes, you do. So, you know, but sometimes you need that support, right? So I think it's a matter of confidence. It's a matter of having your support system, you know, and finding those folks to help you with that.
So when you, in your positions, I know that you have to talk to people who potentially want to work at your companies at times. And is there ever a time you're looking at a resume and you're like, this person isn't, how did they even get to me? do you give somebody who isn't qualified on paper an opportunity to interview with you? Be honest. You can say no.
So I would say it depends. No, I mean, it's a fair question because I've had instances where I'm like, I am clearly qualified, but did my resume jump out? No, but do I know somebody, like, right, like you have to work your systems. But you do have to sort of stand out to be able to advance. So if you have a lame resume, then no, it's not going to happen. But if you have a good resume and there's some bones to it, there's attributes in there, then it piques the curiosity. So I think that's the way, you know, you kind of have to navigate that piece.
All right, listen, we're going to do one more question from the panel, and then we're going to open it up to the audience so you all can participate. So do either one of you have a question?
Yeah, I got one. Sure, you might have the next one too. I'm curious, it sounds like you've had a bunch of people support you in your careers. What about you supporting younger women in maybe womentorship or some program or something like that? What do you look for, and then how do you support the next generation?
I think it's women and men, right? The next generation that really need that support and the leadership. And we do a lot of things. So I run a practice with several hundred people and really try to make sure that we've got leaders within the practice who are providing coaching and curriculum, learning series, really understanding what motivates and energizes these individuals and what makes them want to come to work every day. And I think the best way to do that is by having those conversations and really getting to the bottom of what makes them feel excited and then being able to deliver on that. And it's going to be different for everybody. You can have a team of 10 people and they're all motivated by different things. And so how you can understand that and then actually demonstrate that you're there to coach them is incredibly important from a team building standpoint. So there's a lot of work we do as an organization just in terms of bringing up the next generation of leaders, and it's from all the things like curriculum and one-on-one coaching, counselees, things of that sort, but something that we focus on and I personally, you know, like to do and pay it forward because I've had a lot of that in my career as well.
So my mission is to get more women elected to office. That's a personal goal for me. So thank you. And so encouraging women, so working with organizations like Emerge California, Emerge America, or She Should Run. I mean, there's so many great organizations out there that do assessments, figure out what city councils are missing a woman's voice or, you know, anything around that space. I work on, I try to engage in. We need to have that voice because, as you know, last year in the state, we were able to increase women's presence by 18%. We still have a long way to go. We need additional minority women voices at the table. It is so critical that we have women voices at that elected level. So for me, that's just where I focus my energy. I don't have a team at United. It's me covering government affairs on the West Coast. But when I do get additional resources, I will always look for diversity. And for me, like women diversity. All of my consultants are women, so I try to do it in that way. They're all amazing, and I did look at men too, and they work with men, but my primaries are women. So because it's that voice. Like you need that voice, and there's a lot of amazing men out there that are our allies and friends. But having that woman cohort, particularly in elected office, is so critical.
All right, everyone, we're going to do questions. Sandra, Nick's beautiful wife, is going to walk around. Does anyone have a question? Oh, there's one all the way in the back. Can you go? Yeah, go all the way. Slowly but surely. All right. If you could stand up, that'd be great. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for the amazing experience sharing. I really appreciate it to see like a woman, a credible woman like you guys share your experience. So thank you for that. I have a question about leadership. So how actually we find a balance as a woman to become a leader that in a way have the woman style, which is like with our sentimental, whatever we would like to lead, and in the same time taken seriously. Because sometimes they will say, oh yeah, you're too sentimental because this is a woman and stuff. Like how we find finally the balance to impose our woman leadership style. Thank you very much.
I'd say it's a challenge. I have found what works for me is I'm really a gentle, nice, kind. I start really from that space from the get-go. But I very quickly pivot to a little bit more aggressive. And so to be heard, I'm a lot more direct, very clear, concise. Brevity is key, I think, when you're talking to other leaders. So, and also finding allies to then amplify third-party validators when you're leading, so that when you're saying something, you already stack the room a little bit with other people that are going to help amplify your ideas or direction or strategy. Just like in politics, when you're talking to that dais, you want to count your votes. I conduct every meeting that way. Do I have someone in that room that'll have my back? Whether it's someone that works with me up here, or maybe another manager or leader, or maybe my boss. I'm like, hey, I need you on this call because I'm going to blow it up, and I need you to be the nice guy to have my back. And I always say that because I'm about to do that tomorrow on an issue, and I just had to, right? So I think that's the balance. But you also always lead with kindness. I always thank people profusely. It's almost obnoxious. I'm always telling people how much I appreciate them, because I do. It's genuine for me, because if I'm going to have that kind of intensity with you, I want you to know that I appreciate you allowing me to do that, because it's not a personal thing. It's just I'm trying to make things happen. And sometimes you just need to be really direct and concise to make it happen.
All right. We got one back here.
Thank you for the candid conversation. My name is Preeti Padmanabhan, and my question is, I have actually two questions. One is with what Human talked about, which is, say, if you don't have the qualifications, you still apply for the role. Say you apply for the role, and then the hiring team calls out the flaws. What are some ways do you actually respond to that? That's my first question. And my second is, I'd love to hear your vision for your future. Where do you see yourself, say, 5 years from now?
Question, just to clarify, how do you respond to that, as the person doing the interview, or as the, yeah. Yeah. So as the person doing the hiring, I'm a little fortunate. We have a team that does all the screening. So if I came across a resume that didn't have all the qualifications, it would probably be a shorter meeting. But in the case that maybe it's the paper doesn't necessarily demonstrate all the qualifications are there, as the person doing the hiring, I would probe on some of those areas, right? You know what is needed in that role to be successful, and sometimes the resume doesn't speak for itself, right? It's the storytelling, it's how people communicate, it's how you come across, and sometimes the question and the dialogue helps to bridge the gap between what's written down from a skill set standpoint and what the person has actually done, what experiences they have. So that's how I would personally handle that. I don't know if you want to add.
I just have a philosophy to fake it till you make it. And
or that.
She's right.
Just that.
I mean, because you can spin anything. And truly, I mean, you just can. The PR people in the room are like, yes. So, I really do believe in faking it till you make it, because you have, in order to ask a good question, you have a knowledge base, right? In order to be able to follow up with questions and whatnot. So if someone highlights something that you may be deficient, you can always use an example to say, well, actually, I may have X, or I have tried Y, but this is an opportunity for me to grow. And here is, and I'm looking forward for your mentorship to be able to allow me to try something like, there's nothing that's off the table. I think that's the spin, that's the make it sting.
So listen, I don't want you to answer her second question yet because that's what I want to end the podcast with. Where do you see yourself next? So we'll hold off on that one yet.
All right, I'm Joe. I want to say thank you very much. First of all, I'll vote for you. It's that confidence that really is most important. When I have people working for me or I need somebody to make a decision, I need the confidence, even if it's wrong, that you're going to see it through to the end. So spectacular. But one of the issues we have is we're fighting this political battle that's happening on Florida's front that's actually pervasive throughout the country. And this inclusion, which is super important in my business, all right, we actually fund researchers. Well, I work at NASA, and we actually fund scientists all over the country. And one of the most primary things we do is inclusion. We're trying to get these people this mind that is unopened or they just don't have the confidence to actually do science research on other planets. And we basically give them money, federal money, to make sure inclusion is part of their contract. And Florida just said no. Okay, they just said no to federal money and their state. So we're going to have this battle. But the issue is this is something that United's going to have to deal with. This is something Disney's dealing with, right? This is something that we need all of us to stick together to make sure that this doesn't go away. And so as a leader, I'm right behind you. Get more women into this program. Get more inclusion into politics, right? You have to participate. So I thank you for what you're doing, but please tell us, what are you going to do to help us help you?
Do you have an answer for that? You can say no. You can say no comment. I mean,
When I hear that question, it's like we just need to do more, right? So challenge. It is unacceptable what is happening in Florida. What is interesting for me at United Airlines is we look at Florida as an emerging market. So we just invested millions of dollars to create a station there for pilots, of which we have less than 6% women as a pilot on the planet. Like all the airlines combined, there's less than 6%. So we've created a pilot program in Arizona and Goodyear to create more pilots. And when they come out of our program, they may likely be based in Florida. So pushing and challenging the status quo when you have a state that's doing that, you need companies that are willing to push the envelope. I'd say PG&E did that when they supported Prop 8. They were the first company to put $250,000 into that, and they got all kinds of backlash for it. They didn't care. They were the first company also to offer benefits to domestic partners that were same-sex, transgender reassignment, health benefits, right? Like you just have to go there and challenge places like Florida. So to make it like a minority voice, because we're going to be the majority. So working at a company like United and what Accenture does for companies like United to help make that happen, that's the only way you battle that level of ignorance.
all right, we have time for two more. Yeah, please. All right, Peter's got questions from the, all right.
So just Juliet, and I just wanted to say from my perspective, it isn't men versus women, because for me, most of my colleagues that are supportive are men. And I think the challenge in the world is for women to support women. And for me, I try to support women, but for me to find women that support me is the challenge. So I don't think it should be men versus women. And it should be, you look at who's the best qualified for the position and select them there. Perhaps women have less opportunities, but then you have to figure out if it makes sense to place the woman in a position that maybe the male is more qualified. And then also from my experience, I come from a serious medical background. And as I became CEO founder, I found older gentlemen have an issue reporting to younger women because they're used to housewives. So the younger generation of men was better. And then also for females, I feel you do have to dress appropriately for a business meeting because if you're going to put on a short skirt and then wonder why you're not getting serious attention, well, you have to dress professionally as a business lady. And I'm advising a young lady in a startup, and she wore a very short skirt to a meeting and wondered why men are not paying attention. Well, men are men, so dress appropriately, like put on a business suit. And I advised her on that. So anyway, that's my perspective.
Do you want to, thank you. Do you want to talk about times women aren't supporting other women? Do you have a story of that? Do you have experience with that? I mean, I've heard that quite a bit, but I haven't heard it recently. When I was in college, I had a professor who said, women, be careful. It won't be the men coming after you. It'll be the other women who are threatened by you. So it's kind of a taboo. I'm glad she brought it up. I couldn't bring it up. I'm glad you brought it up. But if you wanna address it, we can. If not, we can move on to the comments.
I'll say one thing. I'm sure there's plenty of stories. I've experienced it myself, but I heard a speaker recently say it's not just women supporting other women, it's women supporting women that do what you do. So you're essentially promoting women and not to be afraid of the competition. So just to kind of elevate the point a little bit, I think that is a nuance to what we need to be doing more of and differently.
All right, great. All right, let's hear about the comment.
So Julie Winterborn asked, what's the biggest risk that you've taken that helped you level up your career or community?
Are you guys, so I'm going to defend our panelists here. There are certain things that they may not be allowed to talk about because of their industries. And
You also might not see it as a risk because it's probably just like another.
is there any war stories from PG&E that you're allowed to share back in the day when California was blowing up?
You know, okay, so I'll share a quick story. So the unfortunate San Bruno incident that happened September 9th, 2010, you know, the reality of it was I don't think anybody was prepared for what that incident meant. You know, you sort of have to get inoculated to things, right? So when you experience something and inoculates you, you know what to expect. I don't think the company was really appreciated the magnitude of what happened that night. That weekend, I was in the city, basically the only government affairs person. Governor Schwarzenegger was in China. Abel Maldonado was the acting governor. He had come to the community to tour, and I was in the field. So I had the leadership there, and I was making calls. I was a manager at the time. I'm like, here's what you're going to say, president. Here's what you're going to say, leader of gas. Here's what you're going to say, leader of electric. I was writing things because someone had to. And there were leaders at headquarters talking about things and making decisions, but they weren't there in the middle of a community meeting with 1,500 people at St. Robert, facing them, talking with them, sharing with them what was going on. And I got like a total rip for making some of the calls that I made. And I was so taken aback. Like, I'm like, I'm here, I'm now awake at this point, probably over 40 hours in an emergency situation, trying to coordinate communications on behalf of the community, a community I care about. I learned how to drive a garbage truck in San Bruno. I had a lot of love for this community. I cut my teeth there when I graduated college. And so I went against everybody. I didn't care. I was like, fire me then. And I shared that story because you sometimes have to do what's right, and you got to do it, and you can't really care about the consequences or what's being asked of you. Like, your boss said X. Well, is your boss asking you to write things? You kind of have to question it. And so I did, and I didn't care about the consequences because I knew what I needed to go to sleep in my body knowing that I did the right thing.
Nice. Do you have,
We have two
all
more
right.
questions here.
all right, one more question and then we'll wrap it up.
I actually fully agree with the previous comment on the fact that usually it's not about man is not supporting women, but women not supporting. And I fully agree that we all have to be dressed up in a business style to be taken seriously. And quite often being one woman in a room, it's very hard to keep up the conversation, to be able to speak up. But my question is for you, what we all should do to change that? Because you mentioned you had a lot of mentors and mostly it's men. Me, I have the same experience. But what we all, women, what we should do to change that for the maybe younger generation to be different?
Starts with each of us individually. So find the person that you want to coach, find the person that you want to mentor, and lead by example. The change starts with us. And so if you can demonstrate how you're doing that, it will catch on, whether it's just in your organization or outside. But I think we all have the responsibility to do that ourselves.
I love that you said that. That's exactly when I was at radio. That's what we would do with our interns. We would find the ones that we wanted to mentor. We'd breathe life into them, and we'd help them get to the next level. All right, let's end with this. Where do you see yourselves? What's next for you? Either 5 years from now. I mean, you're at the top of your game. What's next?
I feel like there's so much more within my organization that I can do. It's a massive company. There's tremendous opportunity. I'm continuing to seek out positions. I would love to continue to make an impact there. I also really want to make sure that the work that I'm doing inside Accenture, outside of Accenture, is making a positive impact in people's lives, in the community, and in some way in the world. And that's one of the reasons I joined the nonprofit board. I want to continue to do work in that space and really see how my contributions can allow people to just be better in the world. And that's a goal of mine.
So I do want to run for political office. I have.
We knew it.
Oh yeah, it's coming. I have a 17-year-old and a 15-year-old. I need to get them, having two boys that are, they take a lot of attention the older they get. And those of you that have kids, I'm sure you appreciate. I really want to be supportive. When I was at PG&E, I didn't see my kids a lot. So I'm trying to make up for that lost time in these later years with them. But I'm looking at that state Senate seat after Josh Becker.
Here. You want to tell us? You're getting so much love from the chat right now when you announce that.
All right,
Street
Nick.
party at Park James in what year?
He's done in 2030. Move fast, break things, right? That's what we got to do.
So you're gonna wait till 2030, huh?
I'm not going to run against our boy. We got to let him finish, and then I'm going to throw my name in.
You don't want to fix up San Francisco?
Oh no, I live in San Mateo. I mean, I may run for that city council seat.
It's not my problem.
No. I'll support. I'll support San Francisco. I live in San Mateo, and I don't see us moving. So yeah, it'll come.
I just
It'll
wanted
happen.
to end with one thought. I think these conversations about how women can support women are incredibly important, and one of the reasons why I wanted Papia and Amy here today. I started the podcast saying that I fall in love too fast, and I think you guys can all agree that you're probably in love right now. And I think the most important thing that we can do as women, for women, I'm sorry for the men here, this isn't relevant, but to see what's beautiful in each other, right? Just physically beautiful, what's beautiful about their missions and their goals and their passions. And that's where we're really going to drive each other, and we're going to really make change in the world and with our friendships and with each other. So.
Well put.
So we always want to be valuable to our guests. So what can we do to support your mission? Who would you like introductions to? How can we be valuable to you both?
I mean, this kind of dialogue is valuable, right? Like you guys all just sat through this last hour listening to our stories, and I so appreciate that. I think it's this, right? It's authentically supporting. Just about that women supporting women. There's no other way to live other than to support another woman. I mean, we have our trials and tribulations, but we have to do it. There's no other choice. And when you're seeing someone not do it, we have to figure out what's wrong. Do they lack confidence? Is it a threat issue? There's nothing to be threatened of. There's enough space on any mountaintop for everybody. And that is the way we have to think about it. So when we start seeing that behavior, we got to figure out a way to mitigate that. It's emulating, to Amy's point, emulate the behavior you want to see. But I also think we got to stop when you see somebody trying to hate on somebody else, particularly, and help them grow in a way so that they don't feel threatened. If that's what the core issue is, then we got to mitigate that in some way so that they're not feeling that vulnerability, but really that uplift. Because we lift each other, all boats rise, all boats fall.
Oh, well, we were about to wrap it up. All right.
You're talking about San Francisco politics and San Mateo. Your kids are here, and do you ever go back to San Jose and do anything down there?
East Side. I have a lot of love for East Side. I do a lot of partnerships with San Jose State and East Side Union High School District, particularly for women, because less than 30% of the kids that graduate from East Side Union High School District end up going to a four-year college. And we have at United Airlines a lot of jobs to offer in trades in a variety of places. So I do partnerships specifically in the East Side and with San Jose State because that is my hood, that's my home. And so, thank you.
All right, Neil.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for coming. Be sure to tune in 2 weeks from now when we're going to have Peiwan Xiao, the House of Web3 in San Francisco. It's going to be another wonderful event. Until then, be good to yourselves and be good to each other. Thanks so much for coming. Take care.